China and India are throwing money heavily into Sudan. They're heavily dependent on Sudanese oil. Uganda, there's oil exploration, U.S. military here, British military activity here, U.S. military, U.S. military, U.S. military. Nigeria, again, looks to be the boiling point. That's an original OPEC member. Angola is the 9th largest supplier of American oil. Nigeria is, I think, number 6 supplier of the U.S. They just opened a pipeline from Chad, Cameroon. The French were just flying Mirage fighter jets to quell a revolt in Cote d'Ivoire, or the Ivory Coast. Of course, remember, the U.S. military just went into Liberia not too long ago. Morocco, tied to the Spanish bombing, oil exploration. Kerr-McGee and Halliburton are going heavy here. So if we look at the military activity, and here's recent disease outbreaks, and I should have added, I did add, but we left it off, we will get it on, other than AIDS. Congo Crimean hemorrhagic fever, which is a form of Ebola where the victim melts in front of your eyes, and major meningitis outbreaks suddenly in Niger recently, and never rule out biological warfare. We don't have a lot of time to talk about this. But remember, Ayatollah Mohammed al-Khatami is currently, right now, on a 7-nation Africa tour doing deals with all of these nations. If he does a deal with Nigeria, now I talked to my dear friend, by the way, and wonderful friend, and just sworn in for her 6th term in the United States Congress, the Honorable Cynthia McKinney of Georgia. God bless her, and she will have, I'm not at liberty to discuss what I know about her committee assignments, but we do know that there will be at least some good news in her committee assignments, and that's for her to announce. But thank God she's on the Hill. I mean, she's the last light on the, anyway. But I was discussing this Africa stuff with her, and she says, the one thing you got to remember in Nigeria is that bribery is the chief occupation. So we don't know what's going to happen. But clearly Africa has been a stress point. And more than 2 years ago, and from the wilderness, I was saying, you've got to watch it because NATO has moved in. We just had the coups in Sao Tome and Principe. The Navy is about to build a base here. U.S. Navy is heavy here. NATO announced it's taking a major interest in West Africa. And we have recent within the last 6 months to a year, U.S. military deployments or assistance in all of these areas around here. I'm going to add to this Chinese military assistance as soon as I can get all the data on that. But obviously this is going to be a major boiling point. So, that's the voice of America saying, I love this, the voice of America, that's CIA, saying, China's new African oil ties create concerns. Yeah, no kidding. Now, Michael Clare, who also writes a lot, he's a wonderful professor, we've sold his books on my website, has written recently on this, and he says he's documented Pentagon officials have begun to look for permanent bases in the area, focusing on Senegal, Ghana, Mali, Uganda, and Kenya. The Wall Street Journal has reported that a key mission for U.S. forces would be to ensure that Nigeria's oil fields, which in the future could account for as much as 25% of all U.S. oil imports, are secure. Now, I got to put that back in the context of peak oil. Nigeria's peaked, by the way. Almost every major country in the world is now in decline. One field in Saudi Arabia, Ghawar, which is the single largest field on the planet, accounts for something like 40% of all of Saudi Arabia's oil production. And Ghawar may be on the verge of collapse. Ghawar is, they're deep into secondary recovery. And in an oil field, that's where you have to pump water in, inject it to drive the oil up so that you can pump it out. OPEC recently was able to increase production a couple of, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 million barrels a day. Not much, but they use a bottle brush technique, which is horizontal drilling, which has a horizontal drill with like a number of sprinkler heads on it where they inject the water. Now what that does, though, is it erodes the field. It tends to collapse the reservoir or the source rock faster. And they had a field in Qatar go like this, Qatar or Kuwait, that as soon as they reached 80% water cut, and I'll explain that in a second, the whole field just collapsed. It was over. It was done. We have credible source records showing now that in much of Saudi Arabia, they're at 55% water cut, which means that every day, 55% of what they pump out of the ground is the same seawater they pumped in that morning. If Ghawar goes, Okay, this is where FTW was off the map, where I don't have answers. We're off the map if the U.S. invades Iran. All I can say is bend over and kiss your butt goodbye. A plan for a nuclear war, I don't know what to tell you about that. And if Gawar collapses, and if it's even announced that Gawar collapses, you will see the world's financial markets absolutely implode within 7 days. Gawar, the single largest oil field in Saudi Arabia. China threat strengthens U.S.-Japan military ties. This is the story from Asia Times where they talk about the the Chinese nuclear submarine. Told you I back up everything. Play larger based on the theater East China Sea. It's in here someplace. But this is where I got the nuclear submarine story from. Now, Japan is hopelessly wedded to the U.S. Because of the dollar. Okay, so we've got the Asia picture. Now we've talked about energy. Now and here's another one. Everybody read that headline? Russia may stop exporting energy sources by 2010. Russia is about to have their second peak of production. They can't export at the rate they're exporting for much longer. So what's this big Siberian pipeline all about? You have to play all these cards together, and peak is hitting everywhere. You have to factor in decline occurring throughout countries all around the world. You cannot assume static production. And look at this. From the Miami Herald, which actually came from the Associated Press, this is just December 13th, China and Russia will hold their first ever joint military exercises. Does that scare you? How many people have read my recent economic alert, As the World Burns? Oh, dear. I hate to see what I'm going to do to a lot of people who haven't read it yet. From the Wilderness has only published in our lifetimes ever 3 economic alerts. The first was September the 9th, 2001, 2 days before the World Trade Center attacks. Warning of an imminent stock plunge in the stock markets. The second one was in June of 2002, immediately before the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost almost 2,000 points, wiping out some $40 trillion in shareholder equity, including your 401k plans, your state pension funds, and everything else. Do you remember that in 2002? Any of you who had investments? Okay. This was our third ever. There is a pending total and complete collapse of the dollar, and it will happen with the complete blessing and encouragement of the Bush administration. And you will be the chief losers, especially those of you who are in debt. Especially for those of you who believe that your house will save you. How many people here own a home? How many people here believe that that's your savings? I'd rather ask the gay question again. You guys are lying. You know, you guys are lying through your teeth. Okay? How many people own your homes outright? Okay, let me flip the question. How many people have one mortgage? How many people have 2 mortgages? How many people have more than 2 mortgages? This is about as serious as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. We wrote this, and it's now a free story on the website. Yes, it is a free story now. You need to go read this. It's been picked up and corroborated by a number of people, including my dear friend Richard Heinberg, and one of my closest collaborators, Marshall Auerbach, an incredible economic writer who writes for the Prudent Bear, who's based in London. We collaborate. He and I agree, but we have seen people like Stephen Roach of Morgan Stanley, a Wall Street guru, say an economic Armageddon is imminent. How many people have credit cards? How many people of those who have credit cards are currently carrying 0 balances on all of your credit cards? Oh, you lie. World on the brink of ruin. Stephen Roach, this is quotes about Stephen Roach, who said economic Armageddon. Many clear warnings. Warren Buffett Okay, if you don't like Mike Ruppert, listen to Stephen Roach and Warren Buffett. You may not trust them. You may think that they're rich capitalist, swine, dog, elitist, whatever you want to call them, but they're talking about their own money here. And when these guys talk, people listen, because the fundamentals are all clearly in place. And the problems are several-fold behind the economic crash that is coming that will be nothing like we have ever seen before. Nothing. We're about to start selling a book, an excellent book by James Turk called The Coming Crash of the Dollar and How to Survive It, which says very clearly that housing values, you can expect them to drop 50% over a 2-year period.